If I were standing next to Jon Jones, I wouldn't want to be around him either. Standing at a height of 6'4" and weighing 248 pounds, this guy could seem a little intimidating. Even though this was not the issue whatsoever, fighter Jon Jones was unaccompanied by his coach at UFC 147. Why would a coach not show up for his athlete's fight? Because Firas Zahabi has more than one athlete to train. He backed out of cornering Jones' next fight due to a request by Georges St-Pierre. An MMA news article states that GSP asked for Firas, "Don't go, because I need you here. I don't have anybody to replace you." Having to choose between being there for one person over another is a very difficult decision to make, but there is a reason he chose GSP over Jon. Another statement made by Firas is, "I knew. I was so confident he was gonna win. I was so confident Jon Jones was gonna crush Shogun. So confident, I even talked to him. I said, there's nobody in the world that's going to change the result of this fight. I don't care who's in your corner." Lo and behold, he wins. Guys, don't forget, he's the youngest man to ever become world champion in the UFC. Don't forget, I told you about how talented he is. Bones, aka Jon Jones, ends up without a coach and is having to look for replacements at this point. If that were to be my coach, personally, I would not want to keep having them coach me. Firas assumed something like this would happen. I love Jon. Me and Jon used to be really close friends. Back before he was world champion, before he fought Shogun, I trained him many times. He used to live in Montreal. We spent a lot of time together, Firas stated, and even goes on to admit that he believes it put a rift between us a little bit. I have to prioritize Georges over Jon. Why would a trainer reveal this type of information randomly? Jon Jones is set to fight at UFC 285 for his return since UFC 247, where he successfully defended the light heavyweight belt for the 13th time. As Firas mentioned in the previous stated quotes, he knew Jon was going to be one of the greatest of all time and had full and overflowing confidence in Jon as a fighter. We know Jon Jones as an established and arguably the greatest fighter in the history of the sport. Wow! If you can't believe the fact that this shocking news just came out, not only was he not there to coach Jon, he missed out on the fight that made him the youngest champion in the UFC. Now, the discussion is whether Jon Jones is the GOAT of the UFC, and of course, Firas has an opinion on the subject matter. This had been a discussion for a very long time, but has been mentioned by the media as recently as March of this year, 2023, after he defeated Cyril Gane to regain possession of the light heavyweight championship belt that was left vacant. The title was given up by Jon Jones after having a dispute with the promotion about how much he received for compensation, and if they negotiated a new deal, he wanted to move up to the heavyweight division. The light heavyweight title was up for grabs during the UFC 282 Blachowicz-Ankalaev fight. The only problem was, the match ended up in a draw and nobody regained control of the title.
Gentlemen, this contest is declared a split draw.
And the question still remains, is Jon Jones possibly the best UFC fighter to ever step toe-to-toe inside the octagon? Firas says no. Why is this? Because the same reason he lost his only fight to Daniel Cormier, failing a drug test.
Come on. I'm so sorry.
He states to the media, "Guys, I hate to say it, he's not the GOAT. You can't fail a drug test and be a GOAT." Continuing on, like if you get caught with a hormone, I think you should be banned for life. It's not reversible, by the way. According to a study at the University of Toronto, studies show that once you have these chemicals found inside your body, you cannot reverse the benefits. He also wants to know why in cycling, when they get caught for a dirty drug test, they're banned for life and are stripped of all medals. Comparing it to the UFC, he proceeds to explain how the UFC does not ban for life, and even if you get caught, you keep all your titles and remain in the Hall of Fame. A slap on the wrist. Similar to cycling, all Olympic athletes are to be banned for life and stripped of all medals. Firas was posted on Twitter the other day, and it received many different opinions around this topic of discussion. People siding with Jones argue that after you take a look at the report, the amount of banned substances found in his system were too tiny to benefit him athletically, and proposes the idea that his ex-trainer is a bit biased due to the whole GSP scenario. Along with the amount of substance being irrelevant to athletic ability, the whole test itself itself was replaced by an updated version where there would be no trace of substances if he was tested today. The UFC and its fans have clearly agreed that Jon Jones is the best UFC fighter of all time, and Jon isn't giving them any room to argue off of it. Looking into the future, Jon Jones has a few possible matchups that are being put out in the air. A fight between Jones against former champ Stipe Miocic at the Madison Square Garden in New York City, New York. Jones posts on Twitter, "How cool it would be to spend my retirement fight dominating the greatest heavyweight of all time in my home at Madison Square Garden." Initially targeted for UFC 290 this upcoming July, the next possible date would be later in the year around November. Yeah, that's right. Jon Jones is teasing Miocic about retiring fresh off a win at his home arena in NYC. Pretty disrespectful? My opinion on these subjects are pretty neutral due to the fact I personally do not fight or watch the sport on a regular basis. I will say this though, if a person gets away with a dirty drug test and gets a slap on the wrist, they should continue to compete as long as they possibly can. Teasing your retirement to a former champion when you have no real physical losses is kind of a cocky move.
No nerves, man. I'm cool, calm, just like always. I'm more nervous when I watch one of my friends fight. So, it was a good fight, and just got a good choke and got him out. Couldn't get out of it, and that is what it is.
But I feel that is just how fighters naturally are. At least fight until you lose. Now, whether Jon Jones should be in the mix for the GOAT discussion is, on the other hand, a different story. Thinking about the comments on this video snippet, if it is true that if Jon is tested with the new version of the test by today's standards, he should still be part of the discussion for UFC's GOAT. Playing the devil's advocate, agreeing with what Pierre said himself, the use of these hormones and PEDs are irreversible, and you always benefit from them. He should be banned forever. This for me is easy to agree with if the facts are true, but disagreeable if Jones cannot pass the new version of the test. All in all, coming from a once-in-a-blue-moon viewer of the sport and non-fighter, I think all sports should be held to the same standards that everybody is competing on. We are talking about the best in the world of all athletic activities. Competing on the top tier of competition is something they all share in common, so why not share similar policies and guidelines?
People who don't understand the way that WADA works, the WADA rules and regulations, you do not test for recreational drugs out of competition, okay? Out of competition, you do not test for recreational drugs.
If cycling and Olympians are permanently banned and stripped of medals and Hall of Fame statuses, the UFC should follow suit. That being said, I wonder what your opinions on these issues are. How does this new and revealing truth told by Pierre make you feel as a UFC fan? Is Jon Jones the absolute best athlete the UFC has ever seen? Will he be entered into the Hall of Fame? What is your take on hormones and banned drugs within the UFC? How about professional athletes as a collective group? Leave your opinions down in the comments if you wish to share.